Okay. So, first of all, really welcome and thank you for being here. In the name of poetry, we weren't expecting hordes. However, the fact that you're all here, to me, it's, you know, you honor my spirit, so thank you. I mean, truly, for those of you who don't know, I'd like to introduce Professor Al Moritz, who's Toronto's Poet Laureate currently. Thank you for being here and making the time. And of course, I'd like to say, first of all, my friend, George Elliott Clarke, who happens to be the former Poet Laureate of Canada.
Thank you,
friend, no, friend first.
Yes,
friend
indeed.
First.
Friend first. Yep.
And then my friend Eve English, Henry the brilliant videographer, Martinuk, Nick from the Stop. I have never seen you before, but welcome. And the great volunteers who make this table possible. Just for the record, thank you to the St. Clair Arts Network for seeing the value in this. Because poetry, even though it has its power, is also much maligned. And so I think of myself as a poetician.
Very good, honey.
Yes, in the realm of poem biscuity.
Yep.
That's okay. I'll remember it.
Poetician.
So, yes, a poetician. Yes,
Yep.
I am. A warrior. Having said all that, I do want to say I apologize that we advertised our Member of Parliament and poet Joe Andrew couldn't be here, and we invited Clifton Joseph, who's a neighborhood poet and also national treasure, and who knows where Clifton is these days, but he's not here.
Up.
What?
He will show up.
He'll show up?
Yes.
You know?
I know him.
Okay, so on a much more serious note, I wish to acknowledge the ancestral, traditional, and unceded indigenous territories of the Anishinaabe Nation, and in particular, the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation, on whose territory we work, live, play, and eat, since this is the stop, and on whose territory we stand, lands where our Métis ancestors also settled. Okay, so I have no rhyme or reason to this. I thought, first, on some level, if anybody else has a different idea, great. But I thought maybe you would start us off, you would go next, I could go last, and then I know Eve wants to read a poem or two, I know that. And then if you want to read or write, I also brought exercises if we want to write something or draw something or talk about a philosophy or something like that, we could do that. But I thought we would be regaled first by our esteemed guests.
Okay, I'll start. I think a nice thing to do might be to, if people are interested in drawing and art, is to like draw along with listening to the poem. Even if you don't do anything that has anything to do with the poem, but just as almost like you would draw to music or something like that. But it's also possible that you hear an image in the poem or something like that that would be you know, an interesting way to start. I'm going to read a poem or two. Also, I don't know, Honey had the idea of us giving a poetry reading, like even a short one, but I'm not sure that's a great, you know, let me propose this. Like, maybe read a poem or two or three, you know, very briefly, but not hold the floor for a long time, and then let other people come in. Let George come in, or let somebody else come in. I could come back again later, right? You know, but not all in one big lump, right? You know? Not all in one big lump, right? So, speaking of art, I'm going to read from my book, The Ruined Cottage. Isn't that fantastic? And here's the other part of it. You know, I have it up on my wall without, it doesn't have these words on it, of course, but the original is a two-part surrealist painting engraving like this, right? And it's called The Ruined Cottage. And that's a phrase from the famous poet William Wordsworth, The Ruined Cottage. And I thought of it as something about, you know, my whole life, where I come from, the little industrial town now, part of the so-called Rust Belt, and, you know, collapsed big industry, hard-scrabble people. And then Toronto, which in many ways is a city which in its very magnificence and success, very opposite of the house of my own, is nonetheless, from the point of view of a cottage, a ruin and a ruiner. As we all know, as we try to survive and find places where you can rent, you almost begin to feel like you're nothing but a sparrow or a rat in this city, something that can find little cracks to live in as the huge buildings go everywhere, engulfing actual human beings, right? So ideas like this were in the book, you know, and I don't know if they'll come out with what I read. But another thing that's nice for me about coming here is I used to live here. From 1985 to 1990, I lived up on Lauder Avenue. Right, just it's like, for those who don't know it, just a couple of blocks. It's a north-south street, a couple of blocks east from Dufferin, you know, and it's a big long one that goes way up. We've got a lot of, at these days, those days anyway, a lot of Italian immigrants on it and so on, that type of neighborhood, right? And I lived there and it was great. And so I have various poems in this book that are set here, right? So this is one I've never even ever read before to anybody. So I really like out loud, I mean, you know. But I like this poem a lot. And so it's just somebody walking home discouraged along the sidewalk right here, but more up towards Oakwood after the dip, you know. And because the piece of produce that is thrown on the street was smashed by somebody's foot that you see at the end of this poem was up by one of those markets that's there, the Italian markets that are after the dip, that's are more up towards Dufferin, past Oakwood, up in that area of the city. And this is called Sidewalk. On the empty sidewalk lying, palm outstretched, a white hand cut off in the act of opening, with feathers of white blood tangled and muddy at the wrist. Now let me just stop. I'll start again in a second, but that's a bit of surrealism, right? But no, it's more like a bit of impressionism, because what happened was you're walking along and a girl's winter glove that is rubbery here and has got fake fur here is lying on the muddy, this snowy sidewalk, right? So that's the image, right? So somebody has lost her glove from her pocket, which, you know, happens all the time. In fact, I always think of this, one of the great surrealist images that the surrealists used all the time was the empty glove. They did it in many different ways. Sometimes they turn it upside down and make it into a person, you know, and the glove would be walking along, towering over trees and buildings or so on. So they love this image of the empty glove. So the sidewalk. On the empty sidewalk, lying palm outstretched, a white hand cut off in the act of opening, with feathers of white blood tangled and muddied at the wrist. Then, 50 feet Like 50 miles beyond it, a cardboard tube rolls and shifts in the pre-dawn breeze beginning, inlaid from windows filled with nylon peignoirs and gold chains. Farther along there, through the stuttering sequence of meager puddles, the drizzle worked a weary week to create. A street lamp goes alone like a severed glance or eyeball in the dark under the concrete. A wandering sense that drags its endless nerves, at times looking up through thin black water. The true world. A celery sprig lies here, heel smashed, its leaf still fresh, your mortally suffering friend. You see it and can do nothing, and expand in the freshness surpassing life of new air stirring from the northwest and new gray rain on cement. A perfume comes, fat soil moistened in the cracks in asphalt, rinds rotting under thrown-out cartons heaped at the curb. And all that you loved, deceived yourself, thwarted yourself with loving, comes back more brilliantly in the neon vendiamo. That you may never know what you are, must not and cannot know, in the sweet turbulence of this ever-freshened bitterness, nothing revokes the curiosities and easy destroyings of your mind at night. So, vendiamo. We sell is a sign in one of the stores up there, right? And the sprig of celery was lying on the street, and somebody had stepped on it and smashed it, right? And the street lamp that was like a severed glans, which is the tip of the penis, right, or an eyeball, in the dark under the concrete, is seen in one of the muddy puddles. So it's under your feet, actually. And it says it drags its endless nerves. Well, no more, but in those days, when you saw a street lamp, you'd see all the telegraph wires coming into the poles, right, So it's surrealism, but it's realism also, right? It's exactly what was happening. And then the end part is all psychology. The person is discouraged by his poverty and the bleakness of everything, but he's still celebrating his life. And he doesn't understand himself, and that's the point of the end. In order that you may never know what you are, must not and cannot know, in the sweet turbulence of this ever-freshened bitterness, that's the mood of the almost dawn time, the chill night, and the wind coming in. It's fresh, but it's bitter. The sweet turbulence of this ever-freshened bitterness, nothing revokes, nothing takes away, nothing helps you with the curiosities, all the strange things you see and the strange things you wonder, and easy destroying, all the things that come through your mind and pass away before you can make anything out of them. The curiosities and easy destroyings of the mind. So that's that.
Nice. Yeah.
So maybe I should read one more and then pass on to somebody else. Now let me just check in here for something else that's real. Oh,
There's a question, Al.
Oh, a question. Yes, sir.
The Italian word. What was the word again?
Vendiamo.
That means the South.
Vendiamo. It means we sell. We sell whatever. So if you see that in the store, Vendiamo, and then there's the list of fish or whatever, right? So yeah.
Thank you.
So this is okay. We're talking about, we're down at this end, right? And so this is towards Witchwood up here and Rushden and St. Matthew's is here. So I used to see this father and his mentally challenged, incapacitated son, who must have been 25 or 30, walking around here all the time in 1985 to 1990. And this poem is about them. And it's called Business. Stiff, thick, the white hair of the broad-faced father who leads his shambling son along cracked sidewalks by dusty glass half-hiding goods never sold. The son is the taller one, but still a child, not aware of his clothes, of what expression sees on his soft face. His gait lolls, loosely directed from some weak, distant center, scarcely devoted to any purpose, but following along and looking. Thick lenses glint with watery blue, his small eyes veiled and placid, as far off as the milky August sky. The father, all the time glancing at him and talking as man to man, seems to forget it would be better for this one to have been like all the rest. He has his son still with him. The others have grown up and gone away. But when he dies, then what will happen to the boy? Even this thought is absorbed now in their ordinary errand, men's business, grateful going out through the day, talk with the owners, the salesman, a mechanic, in the scent of grease and sawdust of machined metal, the sifting through tools and parts that flow, spill, and gleam like seeds, like sand, looking for what fits, finding what will work. Afterwards, to stop for food, then walk back home down the clear streets when starlings, hunting and restless before sleep, and children are the loudest things, with the dark foaming among maples glinting as it comes in. So that's a little portrait of the people here who lived.
Thank you so much.
I hope still live.
Thank you. I decided to just take words from whatever you said, what other people have said, and just see what eventually is going to turn out. But it took me to a place where I have to go and then come back to this reality. So really, thank you for what you do, and especially for being here. And George, help, because I need to come back to reality.
Well, what a reality, and I really like the way that Al has taken all of these impressions and observations of people and events and goings on and finding things and creating art, creating poetry out of it. And in fact, one of the ideas that I have, having listened to Al's reading, and maybe I can say this as a challenge to everybody here, is when you go on a walking around your neighborhood, walking down the street, or whatever in the neighborhood, and so on, try to keep track of all of the strange things that you'll see, all the unusual things that you'll see, and write about them. I have a project I do every now and then where I just go on a walk. When I go on the walk, sort of like as Al has just described in his poetry, I just write down, in general, the impressions I have. And then later on, I'll try to organize it all into some kind of poem. But I like those poems because they're very much alive and full of unexpected things. And the other thing that's really good about that kind of writing is that it makes you more fully alive, because you're paying attention to all the sounds and all the smells and all the sights, everything going on around you. It could be a song playing out of a car, over a car radio or stereo going down the street, or music coming from somebody's apartment, or the look of somebody pushing a baby carriage or carrying a child, in their arms, and it's just amazing, all of the different combinations of experiences that you can suddenly become aware of just by paying attention to what you're seeing, what you're smelling, what you're hearing as you walk, and then to take note of all those impressions. So I would just challenge you all at some point, maybe not today because it looks like it might rain, but at some point after that, go out and just walk and take records and keep notes of all the strange things or unusual things that you see and hear. The last kind of poem I wrote like that, second last, I was out on the west end, far west end of the city. It was winter, it was March, and I found a park bench and I sat down. I started to just look around and write about everything I saw, everything I could sense. And two women came walking by, and they were talking about the fact that, and this is during the pandemic, this is 2020, March 2020, everything had just shut down, right? So the lockdowns had just started, and they were going on. So these two women were walking along, and they were talking about how much they missed their sushi, how badly they missed their sushi, and then they were talking about how the best place in Toronto to go and get sushi was this place on King Street West, and they were wondering if that guy was going to be able to survive with the lockdowns going on. I wrote all that down because I just thought it was kind of cool, kind of funny, right? And then another guy came by right after them, and he was speaking Japanese. So here's got these two women talking about, oh, we missed our sushi. Then they got this guy coming along behind them, a few minutes behind them, speaking Japanese to his family, right, as he's making his way along. And at the same time, the sun's going down, the geese are flying around, and the shadows are lengthening. I can look down at the ground. I see deer tracks. I see paw prints of dogs, deer tracks, bird tracks in the snow, and so on. And it just reminded me, while I was writing the poem, that there's all this life going on all the time that we're not really fully aware of or paying attention to. But it's one of the things that we learn to do if you're any kind of artist, whether you're a painter or poet or even a musician. You're paying attention to sounds and so on, and even voices and language. So I think that's the best thing about being an artist, and everybody can be an artist, because being an artist means that your senses are alive. It means that you enjoy your food better. You enjoy your beverages better. When you look at your plate, you're not just looking at a plate. You're looking at a possible roof of somebody's heavenly realm. And just think about that. A round roof for a round building. That's divine because of the people who live there, right? And if you're a surrealist, like Al, you could even pretend that the people who go in and out of that round house with the round roof, these divine people are all round people. They're all round, like those toys, toy dolls and so on. I forget the makers of them, but they're kind of like wooden dolls, kind of round shape and so on. Yeah, that's the best thing of being an artist, is that all your senses are alive. You're paying attention to everything. Nothing is taken for granted. You pay attention to the way people talk, and I challenge you. I talked about walking and keeping track of what you see and what you experience, but you all know this. I gotta tell you, I gotta break it down for you, easy. All you got to do is go and hang out in a coffee shop. All you got to do is go and hang out in a church basement or any other kind of basement where people are getting together. All you got to do is go anywhere where there's people gathering, a restaurant, what have you, and sit and listen. Just sit and listen. I call it eavesdropping. I don't lie. I eavesdrop. I listen to what people have to say, and then I write it down. Then I write it down. Because the stuff people say, I steal it. It's free. As soon as I say it, it's free. But that's okay, honey. You got Poetician. That's yours.
And promiscuity.
And promiscuity. Thank you so much. Don't worry. That's yours. It's copyrighted already. But everybody else, look out. Look out. I got my notebook. I'm writing it down. I got it down. They can't get away. And people will say when they're talking with their friends or family members and so on, and they'll talk about anything and everything. And it's actually very poetic. If you actually stop and listen to how people talk, almost everybody speaks poetry. Almost everybody does, without actually thinking about it. It's just the way they express themselves. And so, you know, if I'm in a tavern, in a pub, I know I shouldn't be, but maybe if I am, I might also be, you know, very secretly, quietly writing down what I hear going on around me. And the stories are amazing. But anyway, I'm talking too much, but I just want to give you some of those ideas, things you can do, and that are cheap and easy. You don't need a whole lot of equipment, just your mind. If I'm allowed, I might actually try and read.
Wow, that's what you were invited for.
Okay, so let me get my big old knapsack here. I should have brought one of my notebooks. Maybe Al has one, or maybe you have one, honey.
What is it?
A notebook where that you may have been keeping. No, I don't need a notebook. I'm just saying that I wish I had brought.
Example.
Yeah, my journal.
Yeah, I had one, but then I took it out because my notebook.
Did you want one? Sharon has a lot.
No, it isn't. We're just
No, it's not to
show
write.
an example.
Not to actually write it, but just as an example of
I use
what we tend to do.
I use all kinds. Little ones that'll just go in your pocket. Ones that are
Oh no,
this big.
I don't.
So,
No.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I wish I had brought my working journal, so I could show
show
you.
and tell.
Yeah,
Oh,
the ways I keep notes
Like
and
you
so
can
on.
use this if you like it, because if you like to draw, you can use this, and you can write some, and you can draw, and you can paste in things. Like in my notebook, they gave me a piece of paper today as sort of an ad for the thing that's coming up on the 19th, and that'll be my souvenir. That'll get taped into my notebook as a little picture, you know.
And just in case that size is too overwhelming for people,
Yeah,
there's also like you can get something smaller, right? Like
And
make
then
it
you
easy
can
on
just
yourself.
buy normal notebooks.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
actually writing notebooks of all different kinds, like the little ones like this and the ones like this. Yeah, I think of them as my ocean liner and my lifeboat, you know. But notebook that this big and quite heavy, which I do when I'm reading a book of philosophy, right? And then a little book that I can stick in my pocket, right? You know.
So I gotta explain about this book, and don't worry, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. But the purpose of what I try and do in this book of poetry is take Bible stories that a lot of us know, and rewrite them from my own perspective, my own use of my own words, and so on. So one of the stories I decided to rewrite, which is not to say that I improved upon it, but I tried to improve upon it, but maybe I did not improve upon it, is the story of the Prodigal Son. Because that's me. That's me all thoroughly, right? So it's from, for those of you who might know the New Testament or Greek scripture, Luke 15, the Prodigal Son, right? And all these stories are great. And so it's actually, Jesus is telling this story, right? But in my poem, I don't call him Jesus, I call him X. Because I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, right? So I changed his name, just call him X. Right? So X gathered everybody about, and he starts telling them the story. A papa had 2 sons, and the youngest was chafing to know the world. This young one said, "Pops, give me my share of your estate and a kiss, and let me gallop away from here." Because he loveth the lad, so his sire surrendered the youth his portion of his inheritance, satchels of silver, purses of gold, and his son cameled off into the horizon, right? His camels, the Simides and so on. The expat son lavished, no expense spared. He spent all his currency on wine and women, meat and music. He threw away so much gold. He threw away so much gold, its value dropped down to junk status. Resolute in his dissolution, he rented rooms in a house of bona fide filth. Oh, I'm serious. A house of bona fide filth. True filth. Sniffed after doggone rancid personages. But he also hogged uncontaminated filth. And he adored kicking out with aristocrats. Unable to differentiate toilet paper from scripture, excuse me. Unable to tell the difference between toilet paper and scripture, he behaved as if lovemaking and eating was what theology is all about.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. Remember, X is telling this story. Right? Then famine came. Famine came a reaping. The instant poor boy and sudden delinquent hired out his shoulders to a farmer, whose only payment was the leftover feed that his carcassed cattle no longer could need. The ex-profligate had to eat the grains that the cattle he'd buried had left behind. Anyway, other food, there was nada. Nothing. Then, the son recalled Papa's plentiful servants. Glory in plenty of rosé. Plenty of rosé, lamb, raiment, clothes, under a copper green roof. None got a nod, bread husks, dry grains, to satisfy the tongue cramping hunger. So he says, I will arise and go now to my father, and I'll fess up to my wasteful stupidity. I'll ask him to fire me as his son and hire me on as his servant. And so the boy quit the ranch and kicked through dust and trod down thorns to regain his papa's big house. Yet when his boy was but a dot, a pimple on the horizon, the father suspected right the shriveled silhouette and saddled up a horse to speed his welcome, and then sidle off the steed to let his son handle the reins and steel his feet with the stirrups. But the boy wept. He wept through blur and glaze. He watched stones and dust turn a dark black. And he sobbed, you see how shabby I am, Father? How I've wrecked your wealth? It's best I be your servant and no more your son. But Papa insisted that the lad take the horse. Glug purple Manischewitz wine. Purple Manischewitz wine and glug and spoon gold honey. Quit his crying, his snot gulping. And then nigh the big house, Pops bellowed to his servants. He said, array my son in silks, bejewel his fingers, shod him in chamois silk, and set forth roast veal curried with coconut milk. Oh yeah. Put out the roast veal curried with coconut milk, that's what we want. Trudging from the fields, the eldest son, always loyal, always lawful, always working hard. So much that his very thoughts were sweat. That's how hard he was working. His very thoughts were sweat. He heard the sprightly strings of violins. He glimpsed rose-scented nymphets. Rose-scented nymphets wiggling. And hallooed to a servant. Hey, why's my father ordered all this partying? What's up? Came the reply, your younger son is back, whose absence stressed out your father. So he's called for a healthy and healing feasting. Ce soir. Tonight. The elder son was outraged. How can Papa waste further wealth on the prince of bastards and the jester of ne'er-do-wells? Am I not the deserving one who's drenched in dust and sweat daily, toiling loyally on our estate? Note that drudgery like mine wears out any finery pretty fast. I'm impeccable, but he's unimpeachable, eh? When the father saw his oldest son's upset, he broke off from the dining table to entreat his good son to sit and eat. But the older son spat. I gave you my joyous youth and faithful toil, loyal labor, and never have I been served a feast with perfumed veal, delirious flutes, nubile eye candy. Yet my improvident brother, who's tossed your gold away and flung your silver away, so much so that he slumped home in rags and shame, has won this fanfare and finery. That makes me the worthless fool. And his father says, don't you know that your inheritance is still yours, fully yours as is my love? Shouldn't we laud my strayed son's return, who we feared was dead, but is still alive, and who we feared was missing, but is still wanted? I love those stories.
Yes.
Because everybody's like they're so honest in their reactions. I'm not going to read it, but I got another poem in here that's all about Peter and how broke up he is when Jesus is seized and so on. And you remember, of course, that Jesus predicted, hey, I got to stop calling him Jesus, call him X. You know, of course, that X predicted that you're going to betray me 3 times before the cock crows, right? And he does. But then I've got a poem in here where Peter has to go to a tavern because he's so broken up. He is so broken up, he's so brokenhearted, he's so sad, disgusted with himself and ashamed. He's got to go and get drunk. I love these guys because they are so human. You know, I mean, various religions, dress them up and say, okay, they're saints or they're, pretty good guys and whatnot, but they were just ordinary people. They're just ordinary people. That's what I find attractive about them. They're just ordinary people who get caught up in these extraordinary things, right? But they react to them the way I think any of us would react. Any of us. It's. I find those texts actually to be pretty humbling.
Yeah,
Right.
One of the things that's interesting about that is forgiveness, of course, is a great concept and one of the profound concepts of Christianity and of all wisdom and everything. But what you don't really, George lays emphasis on, and you don't really remember most of the times, the way they portray it. It's clear, like in the story of Peter, that part of being guilty and wishing to reform is half the time, or maybe 75% of the time, or 90% of the time, you're just going to do it again. You're trying to change, but you understand that at least so far you don't even really intend to, right? When the next moment comes to enjoy that, whatever that you shouldn't, you're going to. Yet at the moment, you really feel bad about it, that you're really in communication with God or the beyond or whatever you're pleased to call it, about how you will be better, or you're better than that, or you want to achieve some kind of consistency, which later you don't believe in. Later you think, no, I should go and get that experience, right? And this reality of life, that it ebbs and flows like this, is actually in those stories.
Yeah.
That's like the great poet William Blake said that the inspired prophetic poetry is the basis of all religion. And the religions take it and straighten it out, right? So, yes, if you go to Mass or whatever, you can hear about Peter, and you might have a wise priest to tell you the kinds of things we're saying here. But George is right. Most of the time presented as a saint, right? Saint Peter. He never had any failures. He never did anything wrong. On the contrary, he was always doing things wrong. Right?
He was human.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the most moving things, right, is that after the resurrection, Christ says to him, when you were young, you put on you put your belt around yourself and went where you wanted to go. But the day will come when someone else will put a belt around you and lead you where you do not want to go. Right? And that's always, wow, like chilling words, right? And that's always said that looks forward to St. Peter the Martyr. Legendarily, he was crucified but upside down, so he wouldn't resemble his master, right? That's probably a legend for him. But anyway, but just the image doesn't say that. The image is perhaps, right, an image of old age, of dementia, of being in the in the command, under the rule of uncaring nurses or whatever, right? Of being weak and so on. So those kinds of things, the stories are filled with that, and this book brings out a lot of those things, or to our actual experience, or George's actual experience. But this isn't mine, but we can see it, we can grasp it somewhat through his years.
So you guys might find this interesting, but the community member who was just sort of standing off to the side, while she was listening to you guys at the table, she wrote a little poem, and she gave me permission to read it out to you, if that's okay. It's very brief, because I'm mindful of the time. The canopy tent and table, we all speak poetry, George and Elliott, use of minds. The laneway is our avenue to the expressing of souls. Like, she just came up with that while she was, so like that inspiration, that was so nice to see.
Perfect example of writing down what you come across.
Yeah.
She came across us. We were her surrealism, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for
No,
the
thank you.
That's
inspiration.
fantastic.
I have a question for George.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're eavesdropping, you have to say, hey, slow down, I didn't get that last one.
I want to, but you can't break my cover. I mean, it's deep cover, right? This is just to get the information and so on. But I was thinking as Al was speaking about people who do things and then feel remorse, then go back and do the same thing again. I was thinking maybe that's Donald Trump. Then I thought, nah, it's not, because he has no remorse.
The remorse part, isn't it? No.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect of it.
Well,
But we have to realize that he's still human.
That's true.
Oh yes, he is.
Yeah.
That's good news because it means he's mortal. and maybe he'll come across his mortality fairly soon.
Well,
I shouldn't say that.
That would
right,
be an easy way out for us, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But I think, to me, one of the things I thought that George brought out, and I think of in those stories, is that a nice way to think about them is that you are not this person or that person in the story, but you're the whole story. You're all the people in the story. When you're the father, and you're the older and responsible son, and you're the watchful son. You're the person who's been a sinner and wasted things, wasted your time, right? Like, waste your time watching TV. Don't you feel bad later on in that area? You ate too much pizza or so on, whatever. But you're also the person who the next day is on a diet or is exercising or so on. And you're the person who oversees all this. And then you're Jesus, too. You're the person who tells the story, right? And thinks about what does it mean, and maybe the older son is really right there. The thing never totally settles down. It's like a little volcano, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what is so attractive about those stories, and the stories from other faith traditions as well, is that they are stories that are always true. No matter at what point in your life you might come to them, they are always formidably, devastatingly true. In all of their valences and all of the perspectives that you can bring to bear, they are true because they are pictures of human nature, and human beings do not change. We do not change. I'm 62 now, so I know I can feel secure in saying that people do not change, right? No matter how much they say, "Oh, we changed." No, you didn't.
No. I have to say, as a part of a revolutionary, people do change. It's the only way that we can, forgive. Not always. I mean, there are some people that should never be forgiven. But I mean, I look at myself and 30 years ago, I wasn't the same person I am now. So people do change.
Honey, what you just said causes me to say that what I was really talking about was a kind of transcendental, like a kind of change. Oh yeah, of course we can change our behavior, we can change certain things about ourselves, but whoever we are, the nature of ourselves does not change, in my opinion. I don't believe that the core of who we are, which is probably set up pretty much when we were very young, in our relationships with our siblings and our parents and other adults, I don't think that changes. I think I'm still little Georgie. You know, no matter what kind of acclaim, no matter how much money I have in the bank, no matter how many degrees I have on the wall, I'm still little Georgie. And if I ever forget that, I got people in Halifax who tell me. You know?
I think this is, to be honest with you, I think this is a subject for much discussion, because it's not limited to just your perspective, but it's informed by your perspective in relation to me in this moment, your relationship to the moment, your relationship to the past, to the present, it's not that succinct. It's really, really broad, in my humble opinion.
I will agree with you that it's extremely broad,
Yeah.
right? It's as broad as the universe, as broad as the cosmos,
Yeah.
as broad as the divine, as broad as the creation. But I do think that each and every one of us is an individual,
Yeah.
and that whatever we are, whoever we conceive ourselves to be, is something that has been inscribed from our
Are you
very
sure you're not
earliest moments.
Jewish?
Of course I am.
Who isn't?
At least a part, right?
I want to tell you something. I want to read this to you.
Oh, please, yeah.
Truth can never be known if we only look at one side of reality. The more points of view we take, the more of the real situation we can see. Accurate knowledge is necessary to make accurate judgments. Thank you.
Did you write that?
No.
Well, you read it very well.
Yeah, everybody wants to think today, but I think what that emphasizes is, how can you think without having accurate knowledge to think about? And so many people rush off to form opinions and don't find out anything about the actual facts and reality, right? Or other people's opinions.
It's written by Daisaku Ikeda, a Buddhist organization, president of Buddhist organization.
Cool.
Look him
I
up.
gave you a book of his one Christmas.
Yeah, I've got it. In fact, I was looking at it yesterday.
Isn't that mystical?
Yeah.
Serendipitous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I apologize for interrupting, because I kind of feel like we could go for another 3 hours.
Yes, we will. We will if you don't stop us. Don't hit us with a board or something.
But thank you all for being here and participating and contributing in all the different ways that you did. I don't know if. So I kind of feel like we only have 3 people who are eligible for one of these 3 items.
We're all eligible. We're all eligible.
No.
So I don't know if someone was particularly wanting one or the other.
Yes.
So one is a pencil
I want
case.
that.
So I'm sorry, honey, you're not one of the eligible.
You're not eligible.
So there's this is like an inspiration journal. So it has some little inspirational things, but that you can fill out. And then the pencil case. So you want that one?
That was great, George.
Oh, so
You want
do
this
you.
or this? You want that?
Yes, please.
I gotta go myself.
And then
because
that's for you.
my time on the prosecutor is supposed to expire.
Yeah.
And this is Toronto.
This is Toronto.
Thank you all.
No,
And thank you, honey, for helping us.
You.
that's
Sorry,
it.
Eve didn't get a chance to read
That's
her
okay.
poem, but
Oh,
I will read
Okay.
before we leave.
Yeah, let's leave
That's
this alone.
it's not me. It's Maya Angelou and it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
They're tempera peat markers, so it's like peat sticks.
Okay.
Not really.
One last
Yeah.
poem, please.
You may write me down in history with your bitter question lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sauciness upset you? Are you beset with you? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells with pumping in my living room. Just like the moons, like suns, with the certainty of times. Just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my hotness offend you? Don't you take it so awfully hard, 'cause I like I've got gold mines digging in my backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the cuts of history's shame, I rise up from the past that's rooted in pain. I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping with tide and wide. Welling and swelling I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror, fear. I rise into the daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream, the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Yay!
Bye, Angelo.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you very much for all your support. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll help you clean up your committee.
You don't have to do that. But yeah. So we're pretty much done. Thank you so much for sitting.
What's your name?
Maria.
Maria.
Yeah.
Momentos.